of Candid Frank Live. Welcome to the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV, channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Now joining me as usual is the one, the only, the Aaron William Freeland. Aaron, how's it going, buddy?
Going very well, Frank. How are you today?
All right. So was there a rebuttal that you wanted to do on the you wanted to talk about the Austin Matthews thing? To what extent? Whatever you choose. Go ahead. Feel free.
Well, there was one thing I wanted to sort of address at the tail end of the show, and then wanted to see if we could revisit that on Friday.
Go for it.
And for subsequent episodes. I'm not sure if you're aware, but when Austin has been out of the lineup, whether it's for injury or other reasons, the team normally does pretty well. So
it did real well at the beginning of his injuries, not as well the last time around. This is just me, because that's always been something that I've noticed. Go ahead.
But I'm wondering here, when Austin comes back after his 2-game suspension, seeing how well the game tomorrow night goes, the question I think should be asked is, will he be able to play his way back into the lineup?
Okay.
And does he start on the first line?
So I think a certain person's tongue is screwed to the inside of their cheek on this one.
Oh,
I actually bit on it for a little bit there. I see. Okay, all right. I see what you did there. Okay. Yeah, he should work his way back into the lineup.
Now, whether it's in a first line role or a power play role right off the top, I'm not 100% sure. That will have to be addressed. But based on the fact that he can't seem to control his temper in front of the net, this poses
there's that
questions
too
for the Maple Leafs.
Yeah, I think there has to be some disciplinary learning on his part. That he has to become a little more disciplined, more team oriented. He needs to make a contribution to the team, and spending time out of the lineup sort of confuses all the lines. And the result is, oh wait, they won.
This is true.
I think that's your point, right? I think that's your point. It's one of those cases that I've mentioned this before. Addition by subtraction. But he proves the point that there are players on your team that you can win without. And that's possible.
Here's the other thing that a lot of people don't seem to be taking into account here. Of the coaches in the NHL right now, I think Sheldon Keefe is one of the 5 fastest to 100 wins.
Right.
He is only the second coach in Maple Leafs history. I think the second fastest coach in Maple Leafs history to 100 wins. And he's done this over 2 pandemic shortened seasons and taking over halfway through a season for a fired coach. Most people don't seem to realize exactly what it is he's done with this team. Now, does that mean that he's necessarily the greatest coach, or that he's been gifted with enormous talent? That's another question that you have to look at.
We all know there's a combination of that, but also, when you consider, when you discuss that kind of, I guess, success rate, when you're talking about the Maple Leafs, surviving a season as a coach is something that for a while was that was monumental. He made it through the whole year.
It's not necessarily guaranteed.
So when I'm trying to help you here, and imagine, he's the coach of an organization where historically coaches don't last that long. Of course, we're kidding, right? Because the new version of the Maple Leafs, quite frankly and simply, they're an organization that has had success. There have been Leaf teams for decades. You could probably go a decade that haven't won as many games as Keefe has won.
And that wouldn't be a record for franchise points, that sort of thing.
And that wouldn't be an exaggeration. That he's done historically. A lot of Leaf teams would get 45 points, 60 points, that kind of thing. And I know that sounds terrible, but it's true. And sometimes I think Leaf fans need to shake their head a little bit and remember, I'm not above criticism, but this oh no, we're not gonna win the first round of the playoffs. Here it is halfway through the season, and Leaf fans are convinced, and justifiably so, that the team's going to be in the playoffs. Aaron, even you are old enough to remember where that answer didn't come until the weekend before the playoffs a lot.
No, I remember years when we finished 17th out of 21 teams, just
Yeah,
outside
that
or
one.
on the last night of the regular season getting put out.
Yeah, that's when those Maroons say, "Well, really, what is a penalty that the Leafs don't deserve?" And then they lose the game because what does that matter? It's only 2 points. Well, a lot can happen to a
Speaking from
team.
bitter experience.
Oh, yes. I remember that bitterness too. Um, but to the point of Austin Matthews, okay, all kidding aside, I think what he's done is, we didn't talk about this, the cause and effect, right, of what happened to him being suspended for 2 games. He has raised the specter, right, of he's not going to be a rag doll anymore. And I don't say that facetiously. I say it literally, in a literal sense, where he refuses to be treated like a rag doll now. It's not funny anymore to him, which is a sign of maturity. And I think the team, the whole team, the players on the bench saw what happened. The guys up in the 2 guys up in the booth that, they saw what happened. And I think maybe the team, I don't know if it's a coincidence, but they hit a lot more in the next game. And I'm not saying that they have to be baggage smashing. You know that, Aaron. You know me better than that. But what I am talking about is allowing the other team to understand that there is a payment that can be had for doing what you do. And that's what he did that day. He said, "You know what? I'm not taking this crap anymore." And now the team has to protect him. They have no choice now because they can't allow him to be to basically be so pissed off because of what's happening to him that he gets suspended again. Now, this is only the regular season, right? Because now when you start talking about the playoffs, different frame of mind, right? Different set of rules, different, different importance of a player losing 2 games in the playoffs is different losing 2 games in the season.
Now, I think what he's actually done here is given himself a little bit of space. By showing this willingness to push back, he's shown that, yes, he's not willing to be ragdolled anymore. In more common parlance, I think this is a bit of a heel turn for him. He's gone from being a babyface and a walkover and a pushover to somebody who at 6'3", 220 odd pounds should be pushing back. This is he needs to play with a little bit of bite. All of the Leaf players need to play with a little bit of bite, from a guy like Alex Kerfoot, who's 4'9" on a good day and 180 with soaking wet with a pocket full of change, all the way through to somebody like Curtis Douglas, who's 6'8" in street shoes. They all need to start playing their size and getting a bit of a chip on their shoulder now as they go into the playoffs. You can tell that the referees are starting to call fewer and fewer penalties. I don't know if you noticed that.
When you talk about the referees, and here's another thing, this is going to have an impact on the referees, because what's common knowledge now is that he was being cross-checked and beat up in front of the net repeatedly. And the first thing that, if the Leaf organization didn't do this, shame on them. That they go to the National Hockey League. When they went there to do that thing, the GM should have spoke on behalf of Austin and said, "Look, our guy's getting, well, I'll be frank, the shit kicked out of him. He's getting the crap kicked out of him. And we don't think that's fair. And now he's lost his temper because he can't help it, and that's the thing. I hope we end up in a situation like what happened with Connor McDavid. Remember?
Yep.
Beginning of the year, he's not getting penalties called against him. What's going on here? A player like that who has the puck that often, and he has so much of the margin of play, and he's skating with the puck so often, percentage-wise, you want to use all your fancy numbers that Dubas likes. Why isn't he getting his share of penalties? Guess what? The same refrain now is coming from the Matthews camp, I think.
Now, let's be clear here. Both Connor McDavid and Austin Matthews are superstars. As a result, they are the target of more opposition players. And Matthews should definitely be higher than 60 something on the list when it comes to penalties drawn. Same goes for McDavid. And again, this is not a, oh, woe is us, please call more penalties for us. This is a please apply the rules equally sort of
That,
moment that we're having here.
that may be a function as well, and we'll all watch a little closer and see. Is the reason he's not getting penalties is because he blows through the penalties because he's so big and strong. So, he doesn't look like he's being affected by those plays, right? So that could be part of it too, don't you think?
It's entirely a possibility. And I know McDavid suffers from that issues too, because he's so fast. He cuts through the opposition. So you may have a stick on him and you may try to grab him, but the most you're going to see is a little flutter of the jersey as he goes past you.
Yeah.
So that's,
Yeah. And the bottom line is, you have conversations with people on whatever, and they say, well, they start talking about, well, he deserved the penalty. No one's saying he didn't deserve the penalty.
Nope.
But the conversation when it comes to penalties is mutually exclusive, because you can both say that he deserved the penalty and that he shouldn't be treated that way. And by that way, I mean, he shouldn't be picked or singled out for an act that gets him 2 games suspension, and another player for the same act. And there was a Montreal player who cross-checked somebody on the ice in the face twice the next day. I still haven't heard if there's even a fine on that one.
I haven't heard anything, and I'm usually pretty good at checking.
And the game wasn't even. The game was barely over, and the league announced at the post game that he was going to have to be on a phone call. This is just smacks of favoritism or lack, or the opposite thereof. It's ridiculous. There's I'm waiting to see what happens with that call. And this is what we're talking about, folks. We're not talking about Matthews is above the law. We're saying that the law is not beneath or above anybody. That's what we're saying. We're just saying, if you're going 55 kilometers an hour in a 60-kilometer an hour zone, you shouldn't get a ticket. If you're going 65, you get a ticket. But you don't get the same ticket for going 90 kilometers an hour, or you don't get ignored. But maybe I use a bad example, but I think you understand what I'm saying. I know you do. Come on, folks. I mean, let's be clear here. I came to this conclusion. I'm going to go on a rant now. With high sticks, right, Aaron? They call high sticks. They don't worry about whether it was intentional or not. Correct?
That's the way it should be. Yeah.
And that's the way that they say it is, right? If they miss it, they miss it. We saw them miss one on Marner. We've seen them call a high stick when a stick hits a face, but it was actually a teammate or the player himself. We've seen that too, right? We've seen those as well. But the point is, when a stick hits the face, it's not a question of whether it's a penalty or not. The only question that arises from a stick in the face is it 2 or is it 4, right? Because if it causes blood. That's the only discrepancy when it comes to headshots. If the head is the primary contact point, when a player hits another player and the head's the primary contact point, that's a very fine line. That's a definable definition of what is a penalty. So why isn't a two-hander across somebody's head a penalty every time? Why is this the suspension, this inconsistent penalty? Why is it for one guy it's a $2,000 fine, for another guy it's 2 games, or for another guy it's 6 games?
Yeah, you see, and again, it's consistency, folks. That's all we're looking for here. It's just consistency and accountability. That's it.
But the players know what a penalty is.
Yep.
Right? They don't like it when you tap the other one. You slash a player's gloves. Doesn't matter how hard. We've learned that, right? Long as you hit a guy in the gloves, that's slashing. Why is that? Because a really ugly looking finger happened one time, if we all remember, right? The finger that was hanging and came out of the glove. It was a disgusting look. And that's what they decided. So all they have to do with this cross-checking stuff, yes, give Matthews 2 games. He gets a 2-game suspension because he hit a guy above the shoulders with a cross-check. Stop factoring it, because this is when the problems start. When when they start saying, well, let's look into the reason he did it, like even Matthews came up with that one, right? He said, well, I kind of
No,
got him on the
it's not
shoulder
intent.
and
Not intent. It's
kind of
actual
rode up
actions.
his shoulder and no,
Look,
that's
I didn't mean to stab him 27 times. He just kept running into my knife. I just meant to stab him once.
So I guess we both agree in that a penalty is a penalty is a penalty, and the penalties have to be defined in a manner that is consistent. And in the
Yes.
case of slashing, like we know, in the case of high stick, like we know, in the case of hitting somebody so they hit the boards is pretty consistent, right? There's
Yep.
not much gray area there. There are times when it looks like, and we saw Leaf get a suspension just a little while ago. Sandin, didn't Sandin get suspended for? Was it Sandin?
I think so.
Right?
People got a little heated up over that, but it wasn't actually that Sandine hit somebody into the boards. It was a reverse hit.
Okay.
Somebody was trying
But
to hit him.
there's also one where a player got hit into the boards
Mhm.
and the player was like 5-6 feet, 8 feet away from the boards. They still called it. That to me is making it a little longer. But the point is, what it looks like. The definition is real simple. You hit a guy, he slams into the boards. That's a penalty. It's not a question. It's not a question of they don't at least I don't have noticed yet. They don't say, well, his face kind of contorted a little bit, so yeah, that's a penalty. Wait, his neck didn't go back. He wasn't unconscious. Once you start doing that, you start making value judgments on it. Then you have a problem. So, the way to have consistency is to draw a line and stick to it. Stop moving the line.
Yep. No, like I said, clearly define it. This is a penalty. That's it. You do this, you get called for it.
They know how to do it. They've done it. They've done it. They've figured it out. They figured out that, and the players know that if your stick goes in the face of somebody, guess what you're getting? A penalty. Anyway, okay. So the Montreal Canadiens ran into the red hot Coyotes.
Yeah, this was a sight to see. Gotta tell you, the Coyotes actually kind of ended their road trip through Canada with a couple of wins. They Lawson Krause got 3 goals when they beat the Senators 5-3, and then they followed that up by beating the Montreal Canadiens 6-3. In the last 10 games, the Arizona Coyotes are 7-3. So they've been doing relatively well for themselves on this swing through the East Coast, and it's kind of nice to see, and it's kind of frightening to think that we're a lot. It's not just the Leafs that are succumbing to a trap game situation. It's Ottawa and Montreal as well. Montreal, you kind of expect them to lose because they're at the bottom of the league, just underneath the Coyotes, and the Senators aren't that much further above, but you'd still expect them to be able to take them. But good on the Coyotes for putting a couple wins together there,
Yeah,
and showing that it's
I think what we're seeing from a few teams, the pride is coming through, right? They know they're not going to make the playoffs, so some pride. And the Coyotes, that phrase that I used earlier about addition by subtraction, by definition, that's what it looks like, and it's not so much that the group of players is better now than they were before they gave up a few players. I think the rest of the players, they've read the writing on the wall. If you want to be a pro hockey player, there's no excuse right now. You got to do the best you can. And they're doing that, and they're doing a good job of it. One thing I forgot to mention was, of course, Eric Shallegren of the Leafs got a shutout 4-0 against a pretty good team in the Dallas Stars.
Yeah, now this is reminiscent of Garrett Sparks' first start as well, where he got a 4-0 shutout there too.
Yeah.
We all know what happened to him. He's languishing somewhere.
Actually, we don't know what happened to him.
AHL or ECHL at this point. Yeah, really.
We don't know what happened. What happened to him anyway? Yeah.
Not sure. I was actually really quite funny to see Jason and Nick Robertson playing each other.
Yes, and the difference in size. I wasn't aware of that much difference in size.
I didn't think there was that much of a difference either, but there's a significant difference there. Now, Mrs. Robertson was at the game.
Yes.
She has a compromise. She says whenever her sons play each other, she will wear the jersey of the home team and a baseball hat of the visiting team for either of her sons. So last night she wore a Leafs jersey and a Dallas Stars hat.
All
So,
right. So she rocks the both logos.
yep. Well, you know, she loves both her sons equally, so it's not fair to sort of single them out. She'll just wear the home team jersey.
The only other thing she can do is take two jerseys, cut them in half, and put one on the left, one on
Oh,
the right, one on the right,
those
one on the left.
those jersey abominations. Good God.
That, I'm trying to picture green, blue. Yeah, maybe not.
Yeah.
The Winnipeg dominates 7-3. They beat Vegas. Vegas is running into a little bit of a tough sledding.
Yeah, they put out a tweet 5 days ago talking about or about a week ago, sorry, talking about the top 9 jacks in the world, ending with number 1 Jack Eichel, and they've been over since they posted that tweet. I don't necessarily believe in jinxes, but I just think it's humorous that they've gone over since they actually posted that as touting their player Jack as the best Jack in the world.
You know, when teams talk about chemistry, Aaron, what are they talking about?
Yeah, they're talking about players' ability to play with and for each other. You know, not
And
only do you have to be a good player on your own, but you also have to mesh well with other players.
and if all of a sudden there's a change in the team, questions arise. And it's not necessarily that player's fault, because what
no,
happens is responsibilities change and bitterness
exactly.
begins. In
Yeah.
some cases, sometimes. So it isn't a direct, you can't draw a direct line to Jack.
No.
But what you can do is you can say that the team needs to work things out. You know, chemistry is what chemistry is.
Yeah.
Kane scores twice in Oilers' 7-5 win over the Red Wings.
Yeah. So this is again one of those situations where Edmonton found themselves in a bit of a pickle. They were up at 1.41 before Detroit opened the third period with 3 quick goals to make it 4-4, and from there it was seesawing back and forth to 5-5 before they finally managed to put it away. But I think it was the running joke on Twitter for a bit was every time they posted a score for the game, everybody chimed in. It was 4-1.
Yeah, there was a huge game in Vancouver. Bo Horvat scored 2 goals and assist, and the big competition between two brothers took place there as well, the Hughes brothers.
Yeah, Jack Hughes and Quinn Hughes. And I'm not sure if they continued that bet that they had previously about who gets to choose the next piece of art that goes into the house that they share.
Yeah, at the
I'd like
front
to see
door
if it
was the
did.
last one, wasn't it?
Yep. So it's you know, one of those games where it goes back and forth. It was actually really entertaining to watch. You know, the final score was what it was. It was a little lopsided 6-3, but the game wasn't actually that far apart. So
Major League Baseball drops COVID tests.
yeah, this is one of those things that they're sort of embracing going into the new season. They've actually said that they're going to stop doing regular COVID tests for all but symptomatic individuals while maintaining the ability to move games if the public health situation in any given area deteriorates. Now, they finalized their 2022 Corona protocols yesterday. So they're easing pandemic restrictions 5 days after reaching a CBA. Some on-field issues haven't been addressed, such as whether to continue the pandemic rule calling for ghost runners at second base and extra innings. But they're still going through and refining it. They have an agreement in principle. Everybody's agreed to it, but there's just some other details they need to hammer out. So
this would be my Biden impression. Yankee fans were Yankee players, were upset about Canada and coming to Canada and having to be vaccinated. But you have to be vaccinated in New York too.
yeah, this poses an interesting issue for some Mets and some Yankees players. And quite a few teams last year didn't reach the 85% threshold. So
Absolutely.
that's something else that they've got to clean up there.
Yeah, and the Jays were looking at Freeman and Schwarber. I think Freeman's pretty much out since Mark Chapman has been signed to play third base from the Oakland Athletics. They've gotten some pretty good third basemen from the Oakland Athletics over the years.
They really have. Speaking of, one of their old third basemen has moved on to the Yankees now, so there's that as well.
He was
Josh
one of the
Donaldson.
guys that we're talking about, right?
Yeah, that would be the bringer of rain, Josh Donaldson. He's moved on.
We only got a minute, real quick. NFL overtime. There's some teams that are saying we need to make some changes.
Yeah, and I think it's mostly the teams that seem to think that they got screwed the most when it came to overtime. So, you know, In this case, Tennessee's proposing a change where they have to get a 2-point conversion in order to end the game. This is very similar to the
Oh, I wonder where they
CFL's
got that
rule,
idea.
right? That and college ball, I think, are predominantly where
Yes,
the
yes.
ideas are coming
Our
from. But
overtime in the CFL is much like. Oh, and real quick, the
yeah,
commissioner's going on tour. He's gone to a couple of CFL cities. Look for him at a city near you. It's very hush hush. The league hasn't made a pronouncement. It is basically the teams are announcing when he's coming, and it's within each organization and within each fan base, and of course, season ticket holders. Some teams can accommodate more than others, and there's also sometimes some resentment if they can't be there. So, just wanted to throw that in as well.
awesome. Well, thank you for keeping me abreast of that. That's actually an article that I had missed, Frank. So thank you
Yeah,
for that.
no, there is no article. That's what I'm telling you.
Ah,
They're literally doing this. Just basically, the teams are announcing it, and it isn't really something that is very public. I don't understand it. David and I looked into it this week, and all we've come up with is I don't know. Anyway, Aaron, thanks for this.
thank you, Frank.
For Aaron William Freeland, I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching Candid Frank live Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 6 p.m. The show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For Candid Frank live, other news, entertainment, and sports programming we offer, please check out spanglishworld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Thanks for watching, everybody. Ciao for now.